Welcome, fellow creators. You know that feeling, right? You sit down, ready to write your masterpiece, and suddenly organizing your spice rack seems like the most urgent task in the world. Well, you're in very good company. Today, we're going to dive into the expert blueprint to figure out the real reason we put off writing. And I'll give you a hint. It has absolutely nothing to do with being lazy and everything to do with what's going on inside your brain. And this right here? This is a total game changer. For way too long, we've beaten ourselves up about procrastinating, thinking it's some kind of moral failing or a simple lack of discipline. But the expert blueprint flips that idea on its head. It tells us that procrastination isn't a flaw in your character. It's a deep-seated biological response. And once you really truly get that, you can finally stop blaming yourself and start working with your brain instead of against it. So to really understand why we avoid that blank page like the plague, we've got to pop the hood and see what's going on inside. See, in your brain, there's this constant battle happening, this epic tug of war for who's in control. Your ancient primal instincts or your logical, future-focused ambitions. So let's meet the main players in this fight. First up, in this corner, we have the amygdala. This is the old-school emotional core of your brain. Think of it like your own internal smoke detector. Its one and only job is to scan for danger, and the second it senses a threat, real or imagined, it yanks that fire alarm, flooding your system with that fight-or-flight feeling. The crucial thing to remember here is that it's all instinct. It really doesn't know the difference between a hungry tiger and a looming deadline. To the amygdala, a threat is a threat. And on the other end of that tug-of-war rope, you've got the prefrontal cortex. Now, this is the sophisticated, logical CEO of your brain. It's the part that thinks about the future, that makes rational plans, and totally understands the long-term reward of, actually finishing that chapter. It's your inner project manager, just calmly trying to keep everything on track. And then, caught right in the middle of this huge battle, there's a little region called the anterior cingulate cortex. Just think of it as the brain's negotiator, or maybe its referee. It's the part that actually feels the tension when your emotional brain is screaming, "Run away, this is scary," and your logical brain is calmly saying, "Nope, we really need to get this done." It has the really unenviable job of trying to figure out which one of those voices to listen to. And here is where it all comes crashing together. When you stare at that blinking cursor on a blank page, your amygdala might just see it as a threat and scream avoid because that brings immediate relief. At the exact same moment, your prefrontal cortex is whispering right because it's thinking about that amazing long-term satisfaction. But here's the problem. The amygdala's scream is almost always way, way louder than the prefrontal cortex's whisper. That urgent, primal need for comfort, it usually wins. So this all brings up a really big question, right? Why on earth would writing, just putting words on a page, trigger a threat response? It's not a predator, it's a paragraph. Well, this is where the expert blueprint gets really, really fascinating because it actually pinpoints the specific hidden triggers that cause our brains to slam on the emergency brakes. So, the blueprint lays out 5 specific neurobiological triggers that can take writing from this joyful, creative act and turn it into something your brain sees as a legitimate danger. Let's break them down one by one. Okay, first up is trigger number 1, cognitive load. Let's be honest, writing is one of the most mentally exhausting things we can do. You're juggling plot, characters, themes, sentence structure, word choice, all at the same time. It's basically like trying to juggle chainsaws while riding a unicycle. When that mental effort just gets too intense, your brain says, "Whoa, this is way too much," and it nudges you towards something easier, like, laundry. Next on the list is a trigger that is so sneaky because it often disguises itself as a good thing: perfectionism. The moment you set the bar at Nobel Prize-winning masterpiece or nothing, the fear of not measuring up becomes absolutely overwhelming. Your amygdala sees this potential for failure as a massive threat, and it shuts you down to protect you. From its point of view, it is so much safer to not write a single word than to risk writing something that isn't perfect. Now, this next trigger, it's a deeply personal one. Identity threat. You see, writing isn't like doing your taxes. We pour our hearts, our ideas, our deepest vulnerabilities onto the page. And the thought of someone else reading that and judging it can feel like a direct attack on who we are as a person. For our socially wired brains, that fear of rejection isn't just a minor worry. It's a profound threat to our very sense of self. Our brains are fantastic at learning from experience, but sometimes that can seriously backfire. And that brings us to this trigger: learned helplessness. If you've had painful writing experiences in the past, maybe a really harsh critique, a tough teacher, or just that soul-crushing feeling of writer's block, your brain can form a powerful, unconscious connection. Writing equals pain. And once that's in place, it builds a powerful defense mechanism to keep you away from that pain in the future. And the final trigger is our brain's constant, relentless search for dopamine. Your brain is fundamentally wired to seek pleasure and reward. Sure, finishing a novel will give you a massive dopamine rush, but that's months or years away. Scrolling through social media, on the other hand, gives you a tiny little hit right now. And in that moment-to-moment battle for your attention, the instant, easy reward will almost always beat the distant, difficult one. Okay, so we've taken the problem apart. We know the parts of the brain that are at war, and we know the 5 hidden triggers that are sparking the whole conflict. Now, I know that might sound a little bit bleak, but understanding all of this is actually incredibly empowering, because now we can stop trying to win this battle of willpower that we're basically destined to lose. And instead, we can start to strategically work with our brain's wiring, turning it from our biggest enemy into our greatest creative ally. So how do we actually do that? All right, the single most important insight from the expert blueprint is this: stop fighting. Your willpower, it's a finite resource, and trust me, you will lose a head-to-head fight with your amygdala. The real goal is to change the conditions so that writing doesn't feel like a threat anymore. So let's get practical. To fight that cognitive load, don't just write. Break it down into ridiculously small steps. Your goal isn't write chapter 1, it's write 1 good sentence. See? That's manageable. To disarm perfectionism, you have to give yourself permission to write a truly terrible first draft. I'm serious. The goal is just to get words on the page. You can be a brilliant editor later. This lowers the stakes and tells your amygdala there's zero risk. To deal with the identity threat, find a trusted friend who gives constructive, not destructive feedback. Reframe it as data, not judgment. To overcome that learned helplessness, you need to create new, positive associations. Try pairing writing time with something you already love, like your favorite playlist. And finally, to compete with dopamine seeking, create your own reward system. Write for 25 minutes, then give yourself a 5-minute, totally guilt-free reward. This basically hacks your brain's reward system, giving it the little hits it craves in exchange for that focused work. So, the power is truly in your hands now. You've got the blueprint. You understand the internal tug-of-war, and you can spot the triggers as they happen. The question is no longer, why am I so lazy? Instead, it's a strategic one. What is one small change I can make today to make writing feel less like a threat and more like a reward? The answer to that question, that's the key that's going to unlock your creative potential. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Now go create.